And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, there are two massive movies in cinemas right now. And of course, one of them is Christopher Nolan's brand new 3 hour epic, Oppenheimer, which looks at the life and career of J. Robert Oppenheimer, played by Cillian Murphy in the film. Now, it looks at different parts of his life. We see him as an ambitious young student who struggles with lab work. We then see him arriving in the United States and getting different roles that then lead to him working on developing the nuclear bomb for America to try and end World War II. And that, of course, sees him work with Leslie Groves, played by Matt Damon. We also see his friendship and then, I guess, opposition to Lewis Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr. We see the different romances that he goes through as well. We see a romance with a young scientist played by Florence Pugh. We see his relationship with his wife, Kitty, played by Emily Blunt. So it's kind of a snapshot at different parts of his life and comes together in these two brilliant parts. One part looking at the past, and the second part looking at what is currently happening in the movie, which is yeah, kind of an interesting kind of mix that Nolan goes for there. But let's start with you, Kyle. What did you think of Oppenheimer?
Yeah, it's one, of course, I was really excited for. I'm excited for all of Christopher Nolan's movies, and an interesting one because it's his first, I think, adult orientated movie. I say that like like it's a bad thing. Like his first mature movie in like 20 years since I think Insomnia,
Yeah.
the movie that he did with Al Pacino and Robin Williams. Everything else that he's made has been PG-13, and this is his first R-rated film since then. But at the same time, it's one that's built on the success that he's had over the last 20 years with Batman and Inception, Interstellar, all them. And so it's a kind of movie that I don't think any other filmmaker would be able to rustle up this kind of a production with this kind of a cast and have kind of be able to make a 3 hour drama on IMAX screens like this. So really it's a kind of movie that I think only an auteur like Christopher Nolan would be able to put together. So I was really excited to see it. Um and yeah, it's definitely a definitely is probably his most grown up film as far as the plot and the drama and the characters and stuff and what happens in the movie. There's not a lot of action. It does focus a lot on the Manhattan Project, of course, developing the atomic bomb, but it doesn't actually include a lot of the dramatic things that happened as part of the Manhattan Project, or even as part of the dropping the nuke or anything like that. Um, like for instance, just something that I was kind of thinking that they might show in this movie. I was kind of hoping that he would because I was excited to see how Nolan would handle it. There was actually, we know that they made two atomic bombs, but they actually had the core of the third one, and that one actually caused like quite a lot of drama. It actually caused like two separate incidents where it almost caused a nuclear it caused a nuclear reaction, caused the horrible death of two separate scientists as part of the Manhattan Project, and that wasn't approached or shown at all in this movie. It really was just about Oppenheimer and just about his experience before the war and after the war. Um, I I guess I liked the how much it really flashes around and how much it plays around with time. This is something that Christopher Nolan's kind of been doing since his first feature film, a movie called Following, which had some kind of playing around with time in it. Um, and yeah, this is probably the most that he's done with that, where early on in the film, you're already seeing stuff that happens after there's you're seeing stuff that happens before the war, before he's made the bomb, after he's made the bomb, and he's riding high on the hype from it, and then even beyond that. And yeah, it kind of jumps around all over the place, but it's I think Nolan's kind of mastered how to keep the storyline straight so you can kind of make sense of it. Um, the I basically the big thing about this, and how we were lucky enough to see it in the IMAX 1570 film presentation. That's definitely the way to see this movie. It's not really a movie that I could recommend to people as, oh, whenever it's on Netflix, just check it out. It's
Yep.
definitely a movie. Like I think you need to see this on an IMAX screen.
Even the
Um,
soundscape.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Just the sound, like leading up to the Trinity test, which was the detonation of the atomic bomb. Spoilers, they tested one. Um, yeah, like yeah, that was actually yeah, that the build up to that, the countdown to it, and then when they detonated it, it's just like a packed IMAX cinema, and there's just like dead silence because of just how Nolan's been able to just can just get a hold of your emotions, and just can really just play, like he really plays on your awe, like creating that kind of, oh my God, what am I seeing here? Like you kind of feel like you're witnessing history, in
Yep.
the making, even though just it also helps that he's somebody that doesn't rely on CGI really at all. Like a big joke during the production of this was, is he actually going to like set off an atomic bomb just to like to
Yeah.
get, and he actually did like set off some kind of like massive explosion in order to replicate the atomic bomb. But like I didn't look into I didn't really look into any of that because I didn't want any of it to be spoiled for me. At least like the spectacle of it, I didn't want that to be spoiled. Something else I really appreciated was the special effects makeup. And not in gore and stuff like that, but the fact that you're watching these characters over the course of like 20 or 30 or more years, and they are realistically aging in that amount of time. Again, not with the de-aging CGI or anything like that we've come accustomed to in like Disney movies and stuff. Just the
I know someone who watched the film and didn't realize that Robert Downey Jr. was playing Louis Strauss.
Yeah, that's like he looks so different in that movie. Like I like to focus on the makeup kind of thing, because I think with all how much of a spectacle the rest of the movie is, I think that's something that might slip under the radar for a lot of people. And I think like it pretty much deserves an Oscar for makeup, like alone, I think, just how amazing, how yeah, just how it managed to age these characters. And we're watching it on the biggest screen in the southern hemisphere in IMAX, and you're that close up to these characters on 70 millimeter film, and you can't see where the makeup begins and ends or anything like that. It looks real,
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I really did enjoy it. I think I like I said, I think there's certain historical situations that I kind of would have liked the movie to tackle a bit more. Um, and to be honest, I kind of wish that it had a challenged my the president in the movie has kind of a low opinion of Oppenheimer. This like calls him a crybaby. Truman really didn't like Oppenheimer and his anti-atomic bomb sentiment after World War II. And I kind of hope that the movie would challenge those ideas a lot more than it did.
Yeah.
Because I still kind of think he was kind of a crybaby after what he did. So, but other than that, like, yeah, it definitely is a movie about this one man, and it's a good thing, but on the other hand, it's a bad thing. I think that the movie could have gone, it could, like, it's a 3 hour movie, but to be honest, I feel like it could have gone for 4 hours, or it could have even been like two separate 2 hour movies. I think that would have it could have carried that. But for what it was, I really did enjoy it. Yeah, so yeah, so I really did like it.
Yeah, it's an interesting film because there's so many actors in this film that would
Mm,
normally have led like their own films in the past, like Casey Affleck, Florence Pugh have got very, very
yeah,
small roles. And I think that kind of tells you where Christopher Nolan is seen now in Hollywood, where these actors, like even Kenneth Branagh, like there's all these actors that like basically line up to be in Nolan's films.
mm,
Um, but I don't know, this film just absolutely blew me away. I think I was expecting something very, very special, but this movie to me was an absolute masterpiece. I mean, the first thing that really hit me after it finished was it didn't feel like I watched a 3 hour movie. Um,
mm,
Everything went by so quickly that there's been movies that I've watched since then that have only gone for 90 minutes and they felt like a 3 hour movie. But this was a 3 hour movie and it felt like a 90-minute movie with how quickly it moved along. And one of the things I think Nolan does really well in this film is quite often when you watch a 3 hour film, you have these long epic scenes that like last 8, 9, 10 minutes. And that's what makes it feel like a 3 hour film. In this film, Nolan does this really good sense of filmmaking where these scenes that aren't that important, but they have some little bit of information in that needs to be out there are very quick. So you'll have like Oppenheimer getting offered his role at a US college, and it'll be a scene that'll last like a minute. Do you
mm.
want the job? Oh, I'm not sure. Come on, take the job. Yeah, okay, I'll take the job. And it's like it's over in a minute. And that's what I think makes this work so well. I also think that everybody's talking about Christopher Nolan with this movie, but I will be very surprised if Cillian Murphy doesn't walk away with an Oscar
Mm.
for this film. And I'm quite expecting that Robert Downey Jr. might pick up uh, a Best Supporting
Supporting,
Actor as well,
yeah,
because I think they are both absolutely brilliant in this film. And a lot of people, even though it's a very, very small role, I've been reading online, a lot of people have been really impressed with Florence Pugh with her performance in this as well. So
mm,
yeah, there may even be like a best supporting actress role nod for her there as well. So, but I'm like you, that countdown to the Trinity test, it had me on the edge of my seat, like I was watching a Mission Impossible stunt or something like
yeah,
that. Like it's, and I think what really shows Nolan as an expert with those kinds of scenes is you know how it ends. It's kind of like when you're watching Titanic, you know the boat's going to sink, but James Cameron does it in such a way that there's still suspense there. Um,
yeah,
and I guess Cameron had it a little bit easier in a sense because the characters of Rose and Jack were fictitious characters, so you didn't know if they were going to survive. But with Oppenheimer, you kind of know what's going to happen at every step if you know a little bit about that history. But he still manages to get you on the edge of your seat. So yeah, to me, this is just a masterpiece of filmmaking, and it's a film I can't wait to be able to go back and watch again. Lee, what did you think of Oppenheimer?
The things I liked about this movie, of course, was the brilliant acting. And you've mentioned obviously some of the main cast: Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, and Robert Downey Jr. You've spoken about some of the additional people that have been in there. Um, yeah, but there's just so many big names here. Yeah, if you look at the cast itself, it is a massive, massive cast.
mm.
There is so many people, and there's people that pop up that you just aren't expecting to be there. Like Josh Harnett was in it, and I was looking
Yeah,
at him thinking, "Is that Josh Harnett? Is that not?" And it took me a little while to figure out. Yeah, that is him. And it's kind of a surprise. Matt Damon, of course, is in it as well. Um, yeah, the list just actually goes on and on. So Rami Malek.
Yeah, even Dane
yeah,
DeHaan like shows up at one point.
Yep.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think Christopher Nolan's kind of like Tarantino in a way that like he even though he's making these huge movies, he'll put an actor that you haven't seen in anything since the 90s and they've kind of fallen off, and he'll put them in the movie, and it's like, oh yeah, cool, they're brilliant in
Yeah.
this movie. It's very much kind of Tarantino and him are kind of uh kind of have the same kind of feel there.
Even
Definitely.
Tom Conti playing Albert Einstein.
That's
Hmm.
right.
Like, I haven't
That's
seen
another
Tom
one, yeah.
Conti in a movie for years.
Yeah.
The likes of Gary Oldman. So through the movie, actually looking at these big names come up, and you're like, oh wow, is that so and so? Because the makeup, as you said, makes you, you know, question, is that actually them? When Robert Downey Jr. came up, I was like, yeah, that's him. And then there'd be another shot of him, and I'll be like, is that him? And then I'd go back and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that is him. So so
It
that
took me a
kept
while
you
to
on your toes.
recognize Oldman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Gary Oldman, I was like, well, who is that? I know who that is, but who is it? You know?
Even
Yeah.
Jason Clarke, the Aussie, he's very hard to pick in this as well.
I didn't even know he was in it.
Yeah, he plays Roger Robb.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So the other things I liked about the movie that came out was I guess the impact of what it does to someone to build something that grand, I suppose you'd say, that intricate, that to be a leading scientist and to make something like that. But then if it's used for evil, or if it's considered evil, if you kill, what happens to you? How do you think? How do you feel? How do you then live with that? Because on one hand you're a hero, but you also have to live with the fact that what you made, even if it's with a team, what you led, what you did, actually killed. And so, there's that moral dilemma as well. Should any human ever make anything like that? You're destroying people, you're destroying the earth, really. So
I loved that fact that they kind of raised the point at one point that what they were dealing with, like what they were creating, was almost something that had the power of God. Like, I thought that was very well put across in the film. And even Oppenheimer, someone early on says, this will win you a Nobel Peace Prize. And he says, I don't think I'll win someone says, it's not going to get you a Nobel. And he goes, well, come on, Nobel actually invented
Dynamite.
gelignite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
yeah, so that comes across well. There's lots of smaller storylines in there, of course, with girlfriends or wives, all these sorts of things as well. And yeah, different scientists come into it, of course. The actual explosion was quite magnificent, to be able to have that on the big screen, as you said, on an IMAX screen. And I think the thing I really liked was probably more the ending, where it got really intense, but it was intense from, I guess, a dialogue point of view. I mean, the shots were great too, and they were snappy, and there was a lot going on. But it became so intense towards the end, that you were kind of holding your breath at times. And I thought that was done really well. Some of it's in black and white, some of it's in color. And that
It's like two
kind of,
different timelines.
yeah, two
in it,
different
yeah.
timelines, which kind of helps a little bit to put yourself in, where am I up to now?
Yeah.
I am not, though, a fan of the toing and froing, the timeline that goes back and forwards, back and forwards. But that's a personal thing for me in a lot of movies. I'd rather just see a movie from start to finish. But I understand, there's an inquiry, a trial, so it's important to do that.
That did trip me up at one point. I thought
Yeah.
Nolan was actually trying to say that Oppenheimer and Einstein had time traveled. I was like, what? Like,
And I think, Kyle, you already mentioned that there were some really short, sharp scenes. I think, Dave, you mentioned that too. And for me, like, I want to see it expanded a little bit. I want to
Yeah.
understand the characters a bit more, or take time to take it in. Again, I think that's a personal preference. For me, the 3 hours was too long. I think I can't say the exact timeline, but whenever Matt Damon's character came in, was probably the point that I felt like it picked up. I guess for me, it felt like it was about 45 minutes, but I cannot say for sure. But I felt like at the start, it was a little bit slow for me. And I was really hoping it would pick up. But yeah, once that character came in, and I'm not saying it's because of the whole storyline of that character, but I just felt like from that point, for me, it just was a starting point for it becoming a lot more interesting. And then I really got into it. And as I said, the ending was just quite spectacular in its dialogue and how it kept you really intrigued and on the edge of your seat. And you're wanting justice, you're wanting truth to come out. I won't say what that truth is or isn't, but I think as a human you are always wanting truth, which I think is why people love superhero movies, to be honest, because there's the good versus evil, and in most cases you want the good to win, and you want to see justice and you want to see good on earth. So yeah, that was really keeping me on the edge of my seat at the end, to see whether truth would come out or would not come out. So yeah.
I keep on thinking with this movie, it's Robert Downey Jr. playing a scientist who's hell-bent on greed and success. It's like, where has he played that role before? Like,
that'd be me.
Yeah. All right, so to wrap up, what are we all going to give this one out of 5 and why? Kyle, what are you giving this one out of 5?
I'm going to give this 4 out of 5. I really did enjoy it, but I think that like I said, I do think that there's a lot of parts to the whole story of the Manhattan Project and Trinity, and a lot of those things that this movie didn't cover. And I know that's by design, but at the same time, I really would have liked to have seen the movie take on some of those things. So that's the only thing that kind of holds it back for me. But yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
Lee, what are you giving it?
I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5.
And I'm giving it, and this is not the first time I've done this with a Christopher Nolan movie, I'm giving it 5 out of 5. I absolutely love the screenplay, love the performance, and I can't wait to go back and see it again. Oppenheimer is a general release, so it should be showing in most cinemas near where you are. So check your local cinema guides to check out where it's screening. And we'll be back in just a moment on centralcoastradio.com.